concept very common in psychology, in artificial intelligence and operations research. But I couldn't find it in most textbook or books, monograph of psychology. They miss this concept. And of course, I'm still find it very strange, hard to believe why they mix this concept. Okay? I already mentioned Poincaré, Einstein, they are later. And I want to show you how, how harsh psychologists treat these later. Harris said the term creativity is one of those vague, creativity is one of those vague words whose frequency of use lies in inverse proportion to the carefulness of use. And he said this in response to the book by Hardeman, who published Einstein's Introspection. So I translated into plain English. He said, being amateurish, Hardeman was not qualified to express his opinion about the topic of creativity, whereas experts, such as himself, Harris himself, knew better how to define creativity properly than non-expert outsiders such as Hardeman, the mathematician. Hardeman was the person who published the book to show how scientists and mathematicians think. However, this is my rebuttal. Do you want to trust expert in creativity research, or you want to trust expert who practice creativity? I chose the latter. Okay. We will have to approach this problem differently. Psychologists didn't trust Einstein or Poincaré because they think it's too subjective. Therefore, they exclude it. As an outsider, I did not know that they have such a taboo. So I did pay attention to what genius has to say about creative process. And I judged them case by case, okay? There are some luminaries who always try to say something, some big topic, but luminary may not be creative, okay? We have to pay attention to this. Therefore, you have to judge it case by case. But the most crucial step is I treat it like an artificial intelligence problem. And it's a process called pattern recognition. Okay, this needs to be explained a little bit. You recognize the old frame because each face is a pattern. And some patterns are very unique. You can recognize right away, and there are always some look-alike, right? Okay, it's called pattern recognition. Of course, I use the concept of heuristics search. But there's a missing link. If you ask an ordinary person, what is the opposite of genius? And if you just respond just like I say, hey, idiot. Because we say people who is very low wit, we call them idiot, right? No. The opposite of genius is not idiot. And it's also not ordinary person, because ordinary person, some of them are very creative. Some are almost like genius, okay? We tend to think Nobel Prize winner as a genius. So a person who got the award the day before is an ordinary person, and the day after is a genius, right? Of course, not every Nobel Prize winner are genius, okay? I don't want to spend time discuss, but many of them are, of course, okay? We have to explain why some individuals are consistently lucky in making discovery. So it's not a random blind search. Because if it's a blind search, everyone should have more or less the same chance. And the harder you work, the better your chances are, right? Like buying lotto. Honest lotto, you lottery ticket, everyone has the same chance. If you buy more, you have a better chance. Okay. I find the clue is from education, okay? I already said something about this. Ordinary person could be very creative. So the world are not composed of two kind of person, genius and non-genius. There's a gray scale. There are some very creative, some are less, some are worse, okay? And it's even dynamic. It could be going up or down in time, okay? That's something many people don't believe because they think IQ is fixed. All right, now the answer is this. The opposite genius is a new class of student whom I discovered. I use the word discover, okay? In 1998, and call them dumb high achiever. I have to explain. Okay, please don't play how to. I may not be talking about any particular person. What is a dumb high achiever? Dumb high achiever, they remember everything. Everything that's taught in the classroom, okay? But their problem is sometimes they do not recognize what they knew is the answer. The first time I achiever I met couldn't answer this question, and when I told this person, this is what I think should be the answer, he said, I knew all these, but I did not know these are answers. So the predicament is not ignorance. The predicament is the lack of ability to recognize, and that's why I'm talking about pattern recognition. The knowledge has a certain pattern. The problem, you match them, but you don't recognize. So what good is it if you memorize everything? And then, that's what I call my discovery. I found that I'm a high achiever. They think like a novice cook. They do the cooking by following the recipe. They organize their knowledge into a step-by-step rules, like a recipe, okay? And they follow it, just like a digital computer, okay? That's what digital computing is all about. And nowadays, everybody, not everybody, of course, many educators think computer play a big role in education. And in fact, they probably very much want everyone to think they're computer. Unfortunately, that's wrong because that's exactly how Damai Achiever was doing. Like a digital computer, reliable, but no flexibility. Okay, fixed rule. So if you change the problem, they did not even recognize. You know, once I told my fellow teacher, if you don't have time to come up with a new problem, new multiple choice problem, you know, teachers are very lazy. They want to do research. They did not want to write this question. Me too. Okay. I said, if you didn't have time, why don't you change the test question from passive voice to the active voice and vice versa? And they would not recognize. I'm not, okay? Anyway, they cannot put two and two together. Okay, in Chinese called 举一反三. That's what Confucius said, right? Confucius said if you mention one, you come up with three. But he did not tell us how. Okay? But in English, you could put two and two together and come up with something new. And they don't have intuition. Okay? Speaking about rule-based reasoning, I call the Damhachiva thinking process rule-based reasoning. Verbal thinking. That's actually the correct terminology in the literature, verbal thinking. Because the language is like a rule, one sentence after another, just like computer instruction. One instruction after another, in sequence, okay? But word has a problem, and in fact, Francis Bacon recognized it. It was a surprise for me to come come across this paragraph. He thinks words plainly force and overrule the understanding. And I think he anticipated this problem, rule-based thinking. If you change the key word, they don't recognize it. That it's a problem. All right. Now, I also found that the genius, like Einstein, they're thinking picture. I'll show you his writing in a little while. So picture-based reasoning is a word I coined in 1998, but later I found that it was actually in the literature called visual thinking. Okay? So their mind is more flexible, and they, of course, they can put two and two together. Okay, they have intuition, good intuition. And it's what Sharon Baring said, excellent thinking. What is intuition? That is a problem. Over the past century, some psychology has kind of buffer with this term. How to explain? Almost everyone know how to use the word, but in the past century, no psychologist has successfully defined the term, okay? And I came across this very funny statement. It's an article, short article by an expert about insight. Insight and intuition is something very close, okay? Some people think they are different, but I think they're actually very close. He said this: what we need most in the study of insight are some new insight. Agree? I think most people agree. But the funny thing about it is that they have no idea about insight, but they know how to use the word insight. Okay, just for the fun of it. Now, let's see what Henri Poincaré said. He said many things which really make a lot of sense. And this is one of them. It's biologically proved, and it's by intuition that we discover. Remember, we condense the Simon model into a two-step. One step is finding the answer. Discover. Discover. Okay? It's finding the answer. Okay? You have to use intuition. Of course, they did not explain intuition. But to prove, you have to use logic. Okay? Now, my interpretation. So in search and match phase, you use intuition. But in verification stage, you use logic. All right? So we can do it. You can fill in this space to define it. What did Dhamma Achieva do? They did make discovery by logic, but they also proved by logic. All right? That's the difference. That's a major difference. It's not that logic is bad, because in verification you do have to use logic. And most educated people think if you can think, you're good in logic, right? Well, it's not wrong, but somehow missed the point. Because Dhamma Achieva also used logic. Chinese scholar Wu Si says something. 大胆假设，大胆假设，小心修正，对不对？小心修正。大胆假设 means you're making very bold assumption or hypothesis, but you verify very carefully. So what Dhamma Achieva was doing is a very conservative assumption. Okay? And they may be able to create something. It's called Me Too creativity. Very limited degree of creativity. Okay. Now, see what Einstein has to say. And that, as I mentioned, was in Hadamard's 1945 book. He said, initial thought, the first stage of thinking is largely visual. And word or the language do not seem to play any role. So that's a search and match stage. He used visual. Okay, in the second stage, that's proof, the verification stage. Then he has searched for conventional word or sign, which means symbol, mathematical symbol. He had to do it laboriously to come up with, okay? Big struggle. And we all know Einstein has some linguistic handicap, so that seems to make sense. But what he said is also true, okay? So if we put Einstein's work into this scheme, which means in the search space, you think by means of the picture element. And in the verification, word or equation, that's of course logic. All right? Now, let's see what Tesla said. That's his autobiography, okay? He said, in his boyhood, he suffered a kind of illness, very special illness. And he sees some unreal images, always see some images, like hallucination, but it's not hallucination, okay? So when someone says something to him, the word is automatically translated into picture against his will. So it's very bothersome, okay? Very troublesome. That's his habit. And he was tormented by this kind of constantly appearing images. But later he found one way. It's actually making a lot of sense. How to eliminate those images is to think activate, to override it. You activate, willfully come up with some other image to obliterate those unwanted image. But at 70 age, before that, let me explain. Image is what we actually see. Imagery is what we imagine in our mind. It's also called mind's eye. For example, if you close your eye, can you imagine your grandfather's face, mother's face, or some long deceased relative's face? Yes, you can. Okay? But it's of course not very clear. Okay? It's not as clear as a real image, so you won't get confused. The trouble with Tesla is his imagery is as real images. That's what troubled him. Okay? But he knew it was not hallucination. Hallucination is something not real that's seen by people who has insanity, like schizophrenia or the so-called bipolar. They have hallucination. So Tesla said he has this problem, but he know it was not hallucination. In other words, say I'm not mad, okay? But people still call him mad scientist, okay? At age 17, suddenly he became interested in invention. And he found it very handy, very convenient. Because most other people would have to make some drawing, have to make some model, make some prototype to test the idea, right? He said it's not necessary. He did that all in his head because he can imagine just about anything. He could the concept and imagine the action of a machine. So it's very handy, okay? It's as real. That's making him a good, very prolific, proficient inventor because he didn't have to spend time doing the modeling, drawing, prototyping, and so on. Okay? He even say experiment is a waste of time, which I would not want to agree. All right, I showed you what Poincaré said, intuition, right? But Einstein said picture, right? So can we equate that one? It's an assumption. It requires some proofs. That's why I put a question mark. And in the end, I want you to be convinced that what is known as intuition is a very elusive concept. It's really picture-based reasoning, thinking in picture. Okay. Pattern recognition. So I want to show you why pattern recognition is so relevant, And in pattern recognition, if you are measuring in computer science, artificial, you know what I'm talking about. If not, don't worry about it. I will show you later. In computer science, there are two ways of processing information. One is sequential processing, like processing in instruction in word, one after another. One is parallel processing, meaning all together. Okay, now if we think problem is a pattern, and then you have to find some candidate solution. It's a template that match pattern, okay? Template match pattern. Okay, so the problem solving becomes a Darwinian process of search. In Darwin, it's a mutation. And natural selection for natural template. Just pick the good template, pick the good mutation. But you verify it, you confirm it by virtue of the fact it's inheritable. But solving problem is just like that. You find a solution to see if it's really match, okay? But there are two types of pattern recognition. One is rule-based and picture-based. Okay, to explain this abstract term, I'll come up with example. But I want to give credit to this person. Herbert Simon. Okay, he's the first person to mention that you can treat problem solving like a pattern recognition. Okay, perhaps someone before him has said that, but this is as far as I can trace back. But what I did not get from him directly. It's one of my deceased friends, computer scientist. Every time I met him, he would say pattern recognition. Just emphasizing it. Okay, how important. Okay, there's two ways of pattern recognition. I'll explain. Okay. So I can say our Dhamma Achiever do it by sequential processing or digital pattern recognition. Okay. If the pattern is slightly distorted, they couldn't recognize. That's why I suggest the teacher to change the statement of exam from passive voice to the active voice. Okay, what is digital pattern recognition? Email address, telephone number, that's digital pattern recognition. You miss a letter in your email address, it went nowhere, right? Or you transport a number of street number or telephone number, you don't reach anywhere. DNA typing is also a digital pattern recognition. That's why it's so accurate, okay? Because it cannot tolerate slight distortion or slight mismatch. Okay, I have to do it like this way. Why do I call this digital pattern recognition? This is from a toy. Okay, I call that digital because it's well defined, you see? There's no ambiguity in match. This child's toy. Digital pattern recognition is easy to be computerized. I can computerize a program very easily, and you can do it some other way. Like how many edge? Round circle has no edge. Okay, there's 3 straight edge, 4 straight edge, 2 straight edge. This is 10 straight edge. I can program by counting edge to make them match. Okay. But what the genius did is analog pattern recognition or picture-based recognition. Okay. Now, I think it's better to use example. Okay, look at this. See it? I think you might have seen this because this is a very famous drawing. It's a female figure. Clear, right? There's no other. What about this? Distorted a little bit. Still female figure. Okay. How about this? Not so sure. What is this? To this man's face. That's analog pattern recognition. One characteristic is it can tolerate any distortion, but digital pattern recognition cannot tolerate any mistake, but analog can. Okay? Go back. Continue. See? Transition is gradual. Gradually, it's kind of fade out, become unrecognizable, and morph into another figure. That's analog pattern recognition. Okay? You can tolerate any form. Why is it so important? We shall see. All right. Have you seen this before? If not, I think it's good. Let me ask a question. How many persons? You have the answer, right? How many? Raise your hand. No penalty. Okay, to bashful to admit, I will ask another question. How many animals? Did you see it? Well, this is from the web, and I also copied from the web. Obviously, most of you saw a couple in an intimate pose, right? Interesting, the research has shown that young children cannot recognize, cannot identify, because they have never seen, adult people in naked. They have never had any exposure to the image, therefore they could not recognize. Okay? What young 9 dolphins. Can you see it? Try it again. Can you see 9 dolphins? If you cannot see 9 dolphins, or cannot see any dolphin, that means your mind is so corrupted you need professional help. Okay, that's 9 dolphins. See, the word recognition really means something. Seeing is cognition, right? Recognition requires at least 2 exposure. You must have seen it before to say recognition, right? Interesting, right? The language really is a very interesting thing. I want to say intuition is experience independent, but logic is not, and this is good. And this is responsible for Western science. Because Western science, one of the important areas is logic, meaning reasoning, or experiment. I may be an authority, and authority usually have the privilege to bullshit, but they may not be right. But you can use the logic to say you're wrong. Anyone, even a young child can, because it's age independent, experience independent. Okay? But intuition is experience independent because recognition requires prior exposure. Intuition is fault tolerant. You can have imagination. Look at the word imagination. Imagination means you can distort a picture. But logic is that, okay? So, if I just tell you this, don't you agree that if your thinking is exact, you cannot be creative. You cannot outperform our predecessor. Whatever they discover, we discover it again, but nothing more new. You will have to have the fault tolerance to get something new. Look at this, just for fun. This is from Galileo's record. 400 years ago, this is the, okay, let me use the pointer. The circle is Jupiter. And Galileo used a telescope in 1910. On January 10th, that day, that night, he saw 4 little stars around Jupiter. Later, he showed that's just Jupiter's moon. Okay, this is from his record in 3 years later, has better resolution. Did you see any pattern? I saw this pattern. If you're a mathematician, that's a sine wave. Okay? Over the past 400 years, I did not see any Galileo scholar draw that line through. And if you calculate the period, that's a period of the moon, the largest moon. Okay? I showed this to students. I said, this sine wave? I said, no, not quite. I said, all right. Turning 90 degrees. I said, yeah, my sine wave. Why? Students are familiar with sine wave plot this way. They're not familiar with sine wave plot that way, okay? So if you're imaginative, you can rotate that picture in your head. What I want to say is, why did I recognize it? Because I anticipated. Anticipation help you recognize something. If it's moon circling Jupiter, projection onto the plane will show you a sine wave. That's what I expect. That's why I can see it. Otherwise, you just see this little dot. And they're marked up because they are second moon, third moon, fourth moon to obscure the pattern. Okay, but if you expect something, you'll see it. Expectation could be good, but could be bad, okay? Sometimes expectation causes logic to malfunction. It's called confirmation bias. Something is wrong, but it meets your expectations. So, hey, that's it. That is it. Okay. 2 types of pattern recognition. Okay, perhaps I should not deal with this for too long because it's a bit too abstract. I really should give you some example. Okay, but you can come back and read this word. But I want to emphasize. rule-based is very objective. You know, the modern education emphasizes objectivity. Objectivity is important, but excessive emphasis of objectivity makes the student very dull. It kills creativity. You know, like subjectivity is a dirty word. But I have a friend, classmate, many years ago when I was a student, he always says some one-line punchline. And he said, your objectivity is nothing but another kind of subjectivity. And it took me several decades to fully appreciate the meaning of that sentence. Okay? I want to emphasize object, but there's no room for imagination. That's why dumb high achiever are not very imaginative. Okay, just put them side by side and you can read at your own leisure. But the working of picture-based reasoning and rule-based reasoning, or thinking in picture and thinking in words, also in tune with the two humans' brain. You know, like a left brain, right brain. And if you go to Amazon.com, in many books in English, there's people that living in the left-hand side world. Some people who are born with some problem with that brain, but they're very good at right brain, and they live in the left-hand side, left brain world like now. You know, examination, logic, and so on. And they're really handicapped, and you know, they're kind of disadvantaged. Okay. It actually worked with this very well. But that idea was dismissed by psychologists also. I want to dwell on this because I want to go on. I think I have been delaying this for too long. You deserve an example, you know. What is picture-based reasoning? This is one of the best demonstrations of picture-based reasoning. It's a Second World War movie called Dumbbuster. I saw it in high school. It's a real story, true story in mid-May 1943. But of course, this movie is fictionalized. It's about a mission to bomb 3 dams in the industrial area of the then Nazi Germany. Okay, how do you attack a dam? Okay, a dam is very highly fortified with many, you know, anti-aircraft artillery. So if you drop the bomb from very high altitude, the chance of direct hit is small. But if the bomb explodes in water, the cushioning of water just, you know, weakening the explosive power. To breach the dam, he said, it will have to be a direct hit. Okay? And if you think, even now, I think many people come up with the idea, which actually was used by the Imperial Japanese Navy. They dropped torpedo with water. And the torpedo would propel itself to hit the battleship. And it can certainly do the same thing here, right? But the Nazi Germany, they're not stupid, okay? So they anticipated this possibility, so they set up 2 steel fences to block the attack of torpedo, so it won't work. And this guy, an inventor and physicist, he came up with the idea of dropping the bomb, called bouncing bomb. It's like a young kid who throw pebble on the surface pond, and the pebble skip on the pond, right? You think the bomb will skip over the fence and then roll down and then detonate. And he calculated that this bomb should have sufficient power to breach the dam. All right, now, there's a problem. If you drop the bomb from too high an altitude, the bomb will break apart. If you drop it too low, the splash of the wave will bring down the bomb. So, it calculated the optimum height to drop is 60 feet, which is about 18.3 meters. Not very high, okay?